Be dealing with the police and the criminal justice system. Our guest is Mr. Attorney Stephen A. King, who's going to be introduced shortly by someone very special. It's a warm welcome in the wake of the police brutality that we just witnessed, and videos have been circulating on the internet of other police shootings of Black people. So we thought it wise that we have some deeper understanding about dealing with the police and also the criminal justice system. We want you to hit that share button, invite someone, and let's listen to our guest who has a long history, has a criminal and civil rights lawyer. At this time, we want to call on Mr. William Bernard Thomas King to introduce our guest. Mr. King.
Thank you very much, Dennis. It's a pleasure to have to be on Focus on Liberia. To all our listeners and those who are tuning in on Facebook and on the live streaming, we have a Power Pack Sunday. We've been bringing you information to elevate, promote all things Liberia. Right now on our show, we have attorney at law, Stephen A. T. King, who's going to be sharing some great information. And let me get straight into his bio. Stephen A. King, Esquire, is a reputable and seasoned criminal, civil, and civil rights trial lawyer with over 100 jury trials to verdict. His passion for justice has led him to obtaining several million-dollar jury verdicts, including serving as a lead trial lawyer on a team of lawyers who obtained the largest non-economic wrongful death verdict in Riverside County of $40 million in 2015. Stephen's other recent successes include a $1.1 million verdict against the Los Angeles Sheriff Department for First Amendment violations in 2015 and a record-setting $3.1 million verdict against the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services in 2016 for 14th Amendment violations. In 2019, Stephen was recognized as the most influential minority attorney by the Los Angeles Business Journal and was honored to be selected as the National Black Lawyers Top 100, as well as the National Trial Lawyer Top 100. Stephen is a graduate of the Jerry Spence Trial Lawyer College and is a founding instructor of the Trojan Horse Method Trial Advocacy Program, where he travels across the country teaching lawyers trial presentation and advocacy skills. Stephen is most passionately a community leader who serves on the executive board of the John H. Langston Bar Association and has most recently co-founded a civil rights movement titled Justice X. Onward and upwards towards the light best symbolizes Stephen's pursuit for righteousness and justice. Here you have it, ladies and gentlemen, one of our own. Giving it back to you, Anthony and Dennis.
All right, William Bernard King there, reading a very concise but as well detailed bio of our guest. At this time, I want to welcome our guest, Mr. Stephen A. King. Welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I'm very pleased to be here.
All right, I will turn it over to my man Dennis Jad to get us started here as we begin this segment.
Attorney King, we read your bio, and you've been described as a criminal, civil rights lawyer. So just as a start, break that down for us. What does that all mean?
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, like most of us, I was born in Liberia, and I came here at the age of 10, at the time of the coup. So I felt robbed, I felt there was a lot of injustice there. It was very unsettling for me. So after I went to school, I started as a teacher, and then I went back to school to become a lawyer. And then they said, well, where's the first type of work you want to do? So I decided to work for the public defender's office. And my boss said, oh, you're a poor man lawyer. I said, yeah, I'm a poor man lawyer, because what that meant when people couldn't hire a private lawyer to represent themselves, then they would appoint me. And I would go and say, well, how you doing? What is going on? And how can I assist you in this matter? So I started off doing a lot of criminal law, and maybe did about 80, 90 jury trials, because sometimes you can't have justice until you fight. They overcharge these things. People don't know their rights. And if you lay down on this one, then they will expect you to lay down the next one. And then you're really not helping your people. So I started with criminal law. That means criminal defense. That means if you were charged with a crime, the state has to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt in state court. And then I said, oh, well, because all my cases were appointed cases. So they got locked up. They can't hire their own lawyer, then they can call me. So even if my family called me and said, I have this problem, I said, I can't help you. You have to have been appointed to the public defender's office. So I said, well, I want to be able to help those outside of just, the people that get arrested and can't afford it. So I came out on my own, and then I decided that I will also prosecute against any type of injustice in the criminal justice system. So he said, well, what does that mean? Well, they arrest the man and they beat him for no reason. I said, you finish arresting the man, but then you still want to beat him. I said, well, so what? He's a rogue. He will be back. I said, but he has a family and he doesn't deserve to be mistreated. So they say, well, so what? So then when you actually start doing civil rights or civil justice, then that means you're looking at the Constitution now, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, excessive force, 14th Amendment. Then you go to court now, and then you're the one prosecuting the police. So I went from defending people, and then I saw all this injustice, and nobody wanted to do anything about it. Then I had to step away, and with my own money, say, well, if it would take 2 years, if it would take 3 years, then we need to let somebody know about this. So that's how I went from criminal to civil rights.
Thank you. Let us get some understanding. Yes, please tell us about details concerning the 2016 victory against the Los Angeles County Department of Family and Children Services for 14th Amendment violation. And also, we want to know, what is 14th Amendment, by the way?
Yeah, there you go. Those are good questions, you see, because anytime you are deprived of your liberty, you're deprived of raising your child, the police come beat down your door, okay? They are affecting with your ability to earn income or maybe your ability to raise your children. So in that particular case, the case against the Department of Children Family Services, somebody called me and said, King, I know you're a civil rights lawyer. I said, yeah. I said, well, I have a case in LA. I need some help. I said, what is it? He said, well, they took this lady's child away without a warrant. I said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, really, the government should go get a warrant if they want to come and deprive you of something that precious, right? Because you have a due process right, a fundamental right to raise your own children the way you want to raise your children. Not alone them coming into your house or setting up meetings, and they come and then they say, you know what, to hell with this. You piss me off. I'm taking your child. And that's exactly what happened. This lady, she was an accountant and she was raising her child. Things fell out with her husband. So she was raising a child on her own. And she was a black lady, but she was kind of Dominican, but she looked like us, right? She was brown, And so the child, about a year and a half, he started falling off the growth scale. I mean, he wasn't eating things. There were just things happening to her. She said, oh, but look at this boy, man. He's not eating. So she got very concerned. She stopped her job. She was working from home. She started going to all these different doctors, all these different specialists to say, well, something is going on with my child. Please help. Nutritionists, everybody. So those people have a mandatory duty to report. If they look at the child and say, oh, this child is suffering. I wonder if the mom not taking care of the child. I don't know, right? But they call Department of Children and Family Services. You see, all these government agencies are supposed to be there to serve and to protect. But the attitude and the flavor and the power, it gets to their head. So the lady, one of the doctors reported and just said, there's this child, he's failing to thrive. That means he's going off the growth scale now. He's not really gaining weight like he's supposed to. And I'm wondering if the mom has something to do with it. I don't know. So they called the social workers. The social workers came there. The woman let the social workers in the house. They come all in the cabinets and everything. She said, look, this is all the information I have. I've been trying to feed the kid all the food. He won't eat the food. So eventually the guy in Plower, the social worker and the mom, and they set a meeting. And in the meeting, they said, because the pa was white and mom was black. And they said, oh, we're going to take the baby and we're going to give the baby to the pa over the mom. And they didn't expect her to raise any kind of fuss. So we said, well, now she's deprived of the ability to raise her child. Okay, you have a fundamental right to raise your child. If you look at the 14th Amendment, it's due process. It's either procedural due process or substantive due process. So I have a right to raise my child. You're going to come in here and interfere with that. You have to have a valid reason. And on top of that, you have to have a warrant if you're going to steal my child from me, because you have to say that I'm either going to kill my child or my child will suffer imminent bodily harm if you don't take my child right now. So what happened? We say, well, look, nobody knew why the baby wasn't thriving. Even the doctors didn't know why the baby wasn't thriving. And they say, well, there's two different factors. It's either environmental factors, or it's internal factors. But nobody knew yet. So then when we challenge them, they say, well, we don't know. I say, what the hell with it? You don't know. Then why did you take the child from the mother? So ultimately, we establish a new law. That's one thing. When you fight these things, you establish new policies. And that's why what's going on today is so important. They didn't have a warrant. They didn't used to have warrants in order to take the child under these circumstances. Now they have to have a warrant in order to take the child under these circumstances. So when we got that verdict, it wasn't just the number, because I think we should have got a lot more, because the judge blocked us in certain ways. But we established a new law to say that if you want to take a child away from a mother without going and getting the warrant for the judge to sign, then you have to be able to show that the child would die or suffer great bodily injury if you don't take the baby now. So beyond the verdict, it was really making policy and trying to make change. But that's the only way you can make change in this country. It's the only way.
So what is that warrant, and what the warrant, who grants that, and what it's supposed to say?
Yeah, the judge grants the warrant. It's just like in a criminal case, right? They say the man's selling drugs over there. You can't just go bust down a man's door, right? You have, it's your sanctity. This is your home. You don't have to let these people in. Now, it's different with a car, because the car is on the street. You got the DMV and all this stuff, to license your car to drive around. But your home is your sanctity. You ain't got to let nobody in your home. So it's the same situation. They should have went, and they have to write an affidavit, to the judge to establish probable cause. The probable cause is, we believe there's a crime being committed at this house, and this is why, and this is why we think that man inside the house is the one committing the crime. And then they have to just your friend come now, he didn't want to commit a crime, then he's gone. And you say, my man, what do you mean? That man don't even live here. Tell the judge the truth. Because you have to tell the judge the truth, that this other man lives here in order to come into my house. So it's an affidavit under penalty of perjury to establish that there is probable cause to believe that a crime is going on in that home. And if we don't execute this warrant, we are likely to lose evidence, or there's going to be some future crime that's going to be committed that's too serious. If we just give him a ticket and say, please come to court, the man will either leave or the evidence will be destroyed. So everything in the law is established, criminal law, by probable cause. So they have to fill out an affidavit. They give it to the judge review it. He can even review it at nighttime. We have nighttime judges, you on call for nighttime. Then they can sign it electronically, and then they say, okay, go and search that house.
Mr. King, quite too often we know that minority people in America are the ones who are heavily policed. In your line of work, my first question is, looking at what we all know to be the co-responsibility of a police officer to serve and protect, why does it always have to turn out bad for minority people? Give us the history of that and then come to my question.
Yeah, well, they expect that we don't know any better, really. Expect we don't know any better. First of all, if we're in these impoverished communities, they say, well, to hell with them. Secondly, they don't know how to speak up for themselves. And who's going to believe them anyways? So the police really have this bias towards Black and brown people. Maybe they're afraid of us. Maybe they envy us. They think that the only thing we can do is play basketball and play football and run fast. And you have to imagine these people that are police, they're not the brightest of the bunch. I swear to you. If you want to, because it's almost like those guys who never made the football team, or who, was, so they say, oh man, I get the badge, and then now I can go and show off my ego. And they're very egotistical. So I think, first of all, they think we're not that smart. Secondly, I think they think we don't know how to stand up for ourselves. And thirdly, who would believe us? And lastly, they either fear us or they hate us. It's just how it is. I mean, I can't really explain it another way.
So that brings me to what really is the role, that legal role and function and responsibility of the police. What kind of power do they have and what they don't have?
Well, you know they're supposed to be there to protect and serve us, right? But look at this. They have the power to detain us. They have the power to handcuff us. They have the power to arrest us. They have the power to beat us. They have the power to shoot us. They have that power. So the idea is it an unfettered power, or is it a power that we can have some sort of control over? Before we had all the cameras and things like that, the cops are still doing the same thing. And people come, you can't do that, you can't do that. Then they arrest this man. Oh, you're on parole for this. Oh, they put the drugs on this man. Oh, to hell with this man. Then they go and arrest all the family members. Oh, you got a girlfriend? Oh, okay, we're going to go embarrass her. They're like a gang. I had a case, and it was the First Amendment case, but they were these rogue police officers. They had their own gang inside the sheriff's department. They had tattoos. The police officer had tattoos. They had their own gang. And it was affiliated with them putting people down after they arrest them in order for them to get some sort of notoriety. They were beating people inside the jails. There was one case where the FBI was investigating. The FBI sent an investigator in undercover. Man, they found out that this was an FBI undercover. They tortured the woman. Had her there, they were laughing at her, Lee Baca. It was the Lee Baca and the Tanaka thing. You know, that's why he got prosecuted criminally. They thought it was funny. It's sociopathic. You know, they think they're above the law. You know, so one case I said, nobody is above the law, especially not the police. So they are a gang. They have this mentality that they are above the law. And they have this mentality that because they have strength in numbers, that they are invincible. And who's going to believe this rogue or this minority person or this brown person over the police? I've had cases where I had 13, 14, all the way up to 40 police officers come to testify. 40. And they come right from across the street. And they get in one group, 5 of them there. You don't even know which one's going to come up there. And they got all their lives together. You know? So they do it because they believe they can get away with it.
So, Mr. King, Mr. King, quite too often, this trouble with a black man or person of color will start from a pull over by the police. So my question is, if you are pulled over by the police, what rights do you have? What can you do and why you can't do?
Right. That's a good question. Mm-hmm. You know, the first thing I try to do is cooperate with the police, right? I keep my hand on 10 and 2 just like this, so that I'm not reaching for anything. Mm-hmm. And I said, officer, can you please let me know why I was pulled over? Okay. And the officer may say, well, Mr. King, before I tell you that, I need you to step outside the car. Okay. So now I have to be careful because I don't want to interrupt his investigation. Mm-hmm. And he would say, oh, it's for officer safety. Because you're inside the car, you might reach for something like that. So I said, okay, get out the car and make sure you have no weapon now. You know, and it used to be that just based off of that, you got outside, then they want to go search your car. So then there was a law. The law said, well, why are you searching the car? They said, well, it's for officer safety. But he said, the man's outside the car now. You're not inside the car anymore. So there was this law that your wingspan, anything that you can reach to, they can go and pat it down and see if there's weapons there. Mm-hmm. But they said, well, wait, the man is outside the car now. You can't do that anymore. So he's outside the car, they pat you down, you finish. And he said, can I search your car? No. You know, if you don't have a warrant or probable cause, you cannot search my car. He said, well, you know, if you're not hiding anything and all this and that, then if it's me, I would say, well, you know, I would like to, am I being detained? Am I being, if we're not really detained, you're already detained, right? You stop, you're outside the car. Am I being arrested? Okay, because they need probable cause to arrest you. So with probable cause, that means they have to point to a specific articulable fact. That means they have to say with their mouth, there was this gun there. I saw him running away from here. He was swerving this car. He fits this description of this robber, whatever it is. So what I say is that, am I being arrested? You're not being arrested. Then I request to be able to leave. Well, we're just going to have to keep you for a little bit. Fine. I would like to have an attorney present before I answer any more questions, respectfully. And that's it. You see, because if you just say, I want to remain silent, they can let you remain silent for 15, 20 seconds. Then they can come back. They bring another officer. They bring a female officer. They bring somebody, to say, hey, man, I know nothing. I know you're not doing anything, but we just need to ask you some questions. Okay. Then you start talking again. Then they can use those statements against you. But when you say, I want an attorney present, even if you don't have an attorney, it doesn't matter. Because you have a constitutional right to an attorney, Sixth Amendment right to an attorney. See, anytime we can constitutionalize what we're doing, we have a lot more protection. First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, excessive force, seizure, Sixth Amendment, a right to an attorney. So now they have to not only say, okay, probable cause to arrest you, now probable cause to keep you there without letting you talk to your lawyer. So those are the most effective things. A, you cooperate with the lawyer, with the police officer, because you don't want to say he reached for this, he reached for that, whatever it is. The second thing, where you're going, where you're coming back, officer, with all due respect, am I being arrested? No, you're not being arrested. Thank you, sir.
Mr.
But we
King,
just have to add, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. King, I just want to ask this question because is there anything in their training or in their cultural practice in discharging their duties that informs them that when you see a person of color, you have to relate to them differently? From your experience, why is it? Why when they see a person of color, they will react differently as opposed to seeing somebody who is not, a person of color?
It's just prejudice. It's prejudice in a way that, they are trained. Just like if you're in a white neighborhood and then you're a black man, it would say, well, that black man doesn't belong here. So let's go and stop him and see what he's doing. Yeah. So it's an internal racism, that is in these institutions. It just is. I wish it wasn't, and then these people are promoted now. They're the sergeants and then now they're the chiefs and they're going all the way up the ladder. They're racist. And they feel that, and then they're in the jails, right? They get trained in the jails. Before they go on duty, like the sheriff's department, let's say, they see all the black, the brown people there. So then when they go out in the streets, they say, these are the guys that end up in jail anyways. So let's go after them. So there's a bias, there's prejudice, there's hatred. And I think it's because they think we are ignorant and we will not stand up for ourselves.
So when the police, let's say you're in the traffic, which we experience most of the time, when you are pulled over, how far can you drive before you pull over? Because remember, when we watched the O.J. Simpson case, they were behind for a very long time. Yeah. Okay, so is it a crime if you keep going, or you should stop immediately? How far can you go?
Yeah, you want to stop pretty much immediately as soon as it's safe, okay? Because they can say you are delaying arrest, evading or delaying arrest, so they have that statute. Man, it could be sometimes you come out and say, put your hand behind your back. For what? Put your hand behind your back. For what? Okay. He delayed my arrest. He made me ask him 3 times. You say, and there used to be times when they arrested a neighbor. And then you come over there, you say, what are you guys arresting him for? Then they go after these people. So you're interfering with my investigation. You say, so they have these statutes, the penal code and stuff is very loose. It says interfere, delay, or obstruct a police officer. And then where I come in is the last part. Interfere, obstruct, or delay a police officer in the lawful performance of his duty. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, the man didn't put his hand behind his back, right. But were you in the lawful performance of your duty? So that's where, you have to pull over. There, you never know what it is. Your tail light could be out, whatever. You fit some kind of description of a suspect, whatever it is. Okay, maybe some racist white woman call out the door and say that man just pushed me. Whatever it is, the police, they can go investigate. Fine. You pull over, you don't know what it is. Your hands are at 10 and 2. And he said, officer, I'm going to ask you why you pulled me over. So I wouldn't continue to drive because if it's obvious that there are signs behind you, okay, then they can say that you are delaying their arrest. And then they have statutes to bump it up to a felony, but it's kind of like if you run 2 stop signs, or if you go very fast, then they can say it's felony evading arrest. On top of that, if they're investigating a felony, guess what? When they come to your car, they can come with their guns drawn. So you don't want to make it worse on them, on yourself, really, because you don't know what kind of call they think they're responding to, because they are justified in not shooting you, but they can show force if for some reason somebody reported that you in this high, crime, you robbed somebody, you did this, you did that. So you put your hands there. You say, officer, you say, please step out the car. Absolutely. Catch you, sit you down, say, sir, am I under arrest? No, not yet. We just need to detain you. We're doing an investigation. Fine. You keep your mouth shut. They come back, sir, am I under arrest? Oh, not yet. We just do an investigation. Fine, sir. And after that, you say, may I please have an attorney?
So at what point is it legal for a police officer to use a firearm by shooting?
When he believes that he is in threat of imminent bodily injury or death, he has to believe that this person can kill him, can shoot him, or can cause imminent bodily injury to himself. Because the police officer, he want to go home to his family too. So you say, well, man, I had a report that the man had a gun. He reached something out of his pocket. He turned towards me, blast. I had to shoot him. I don't have to wait and see if he's going to shoot me first. So it's when the police officer is in immediate or imminent threat of great bodily injury or death. Now, it's really, you see, you have these laws, but the laws don't matter until there's the interpretation of the laws. Like, what do these small words mean? So they say, well, the police can use it when it's reasonable. They say, oh, what do you mean when it's reasonable? When it's reasonable for him to use that degree of force.
So the police officer determines that the reasonableness of when to shoot.
Absolutely. And on top of that is a subjective interpretation. So of either that police officer or another reasonable police officer in those circumstances. So you say, what would a reasonable police officer have believed in the same police officer's shoes? Subjective shoes, subjective. Not like an objective person that just over there, a subjective police officer. Oh, I have training, I have gang this and that, and I know this and I know that and I know this. And based off my training experience, when A, B, C, and D happens, it's likely that I'm going to get shot. So I thought it was reasonable. Subjective. Now, they recently, go ahead.
No, I was just about to say, if that is the case, you're talking about how to be, imminent threat to the life of the police officer. But we've seen videos where sometimes a black man or a child is running away, their back is turned, and then the police will release a firearm. That kid goes to court. That police officer is acquitted of no wrongdoing. How is that possible, Mr. King?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, there's two things now. Because the criminal thing is when you charge in a rogue who running away, you shot him in the leg or whatever, but he's still alive, and then you go to court. But then there's the other part of it where you say, was what the officer did reasonable? So, and that's the civil rights part of it now, because you're not putting, what happened in these criminal cases, even though the cops shoot these guys, they're not charging them with murder. Well, finally, we got that, right? In the George Floyd case. But they haven't been like Jackie Lazy in Los Angeles. That's why I don't like her, because there's all these instances when it's clear that these cops are unlawfully killing people. Why doesn't she charge them with a crime? Okay. Now, the other side of it is the civil rights side of it, when I think it's your analysis is basically, how can this officer say that if somebody is running away, because now I'm prosecuting the cop. There's nobody else to prosecute the cop. Running away, how can you say you are in imminent danger of great bodily injury when a man is running away? So the law is sort of like this. If they have no reason to believe the person is armed, then they can't shoot him in the back. Because they will have the guy running and then his pants will start falling down, right? And he go pick up his pants so he can run. Bow! I thought he was reaching for a weapon. Okay? And there used to be the law that was okay. Now, the cop has to have a reason to believe that that person was armed. If they have a reason to believe that that person was actually armed with a weapon and then they're running away and then they see the person reach for what they reasonably believe to be a weapon, then they can shoot the man in the back. So the analysis is they don't have to wait for somebody to pull the gun and turn around on them and shoot them. But they do have to have a specific articulable basis They say when we got the call, they said the man had a firearm. When we got there, we saw the firearm. He put it in his pocket. Then he running. And then I saw him reach for his pocket. And I said, no way, I'm going to shoot him before he turns around. So the short answer is that if the cop believes that that person reasonably has a firearm, the cop can shoot him. If the cop does not believe that that person, or has no information to believe that person, poses a threat. I had a case like that, but the guy was mentally ill. It was a call, Kenneth Ross, I think is the case. And they called the guy, he's a mentally ill guy. And somebody had been shooting or has brandished some firearm in the park. They say, oh, the guy has dreads and he in the park, it looks like a Rastafarian. I mean, how many park you will see 30 people like that in certain parks, right? Mm-hmm. So the cops come, he mentally ill, he just start running. He doesn't want to be around the cops. He run. He was actually the one who called the cops and they didn't even know he was the one who called because somebody else had a gun. And then he saw the cops or whatever. Then he started running. He was mentally ill. He ran. They chased the man down. He reached for his pants. He pulled it up and they shot him. So, and he was the one who had called the cops. So now that case is being analyzed. But the short answer is if they have reason to believe that the person is armed, then they can shoot the person, if they still believe they're an imminent threat. If you just run in the pocket, the gun in his pocket, the gun falls out, you can't shoot the man. But he's running, the gun is supposed to be in the pocket, you see him reach for the pocket, then you can shoot the man because you don't have to wait for him to turn around and shoot you first.
So before we'll bring in William King, but let me ask this about, your mannerism when you are pulled over or arrested, like in the case of Sandra Blank. So, what are you supposed to say? I think there was this, another medical doctor who was arrested, and they said, well, he was not saying, sir, he was not being polite enough. So what should that attitude be? How should we address the police? Should we say, sir, what can we not say before we get in trouble?
So they call it contempt of cop, right? Contempt of cop. You show them attitude and all this other kind of stuff. I'm just very polite. I just call him officer. I'm saying, officer, may I ask why I'm being pulled over? Well, no, you can't ask any questions. I'm asking a question. Okay, understood. You have a license, right? I do, officer. Can you get it for me? Officer, my license, my registration are in that, glove compartment right there. Would it be okay if I reach for my glove compartment? Absolutely. Thank you. I will leave one hand here on the left, and I will reach for my right hand. When I get it, then I'll bring it back. Okay? Thank you. Okay. I reach, I bring it back, and I say, officer, you want me to hand it to you? Yes. Because they got cover officers, so you don't want to say, oh, I saw him made a reach this way or reach that way. So you give it to him, so it's just really, officer, with all due respect, officer, can you tell me the reason I'm pulled over? And officer, respectfully, am I being arrested? That's it. Yeah, we agitated. And you see what happens is that there's this fear of the police, right? There's this trauma, for what we go through and what our people go through and how the police have treated us. And I think, that's some of what's going on now is that hopefully the police can find a way to start respecting us. And they have the body cameras and all this stuff. So I would try not to be agitated because they would say, oh, maybe he's under the influence of something. So I had to test him and see if he was doing PCP or, meth or whatever. I would try to have my hands in a very controlled position, and I would just call them officer. Because number one, you want to get home, that night. That's your first thought. Number two is whatever they're going to do, they are going to do. If they have probable cause to search your car, they will search your car anyways. I don't need to give them any more probable cause or any more information. They search your damn car then. Okay, that's it. But those are the three things that are important is the hand safety, the very respectfully, why am I being pulled over? They don't necessarily have to tell you right away. They should, but they don't necessarily have to, because the law there is just they can detain you. Now the probable cause is a little bit lower just for the detention. It's just reasonable suspicion that a crime is committed. So they have reasonable suspicion that a crime is committed. Then they come, if they just want to give you a ticket or something, give you a ticket and go. But now when they prolong the detention 30 or 40 minutes for a ticket, say, well, why are you keeping a man for 30 or 40 minutes for one ticket? And that becomes a prolonged detention, which is in essence an arrest. You say, no, we hadn't arrested him yet. He wasn't handcuffed. Well, officer, was he free to go? No. So he couldn't just get up and walk across the street and go get a Coke? No, he couldn't. Well, then he was arrested. Well, counsel, you're splitting words. I'm not splitting words. I'm looking at the law. But fine. You have him sitting there. He's not arrested. According to you, he's free to go. Okay. And, so the next step is, officer, am I being arrested? What am I being arrested for? Because once you get to that point, then he says, sir, with all due respect, I would like to have an attorney present. And why that is important is, again, because it's a constitutional mandate that if you're arrested, you have an attorney. Now, people say, remain silent, like the Miranda warnings, right? Miranda is a California law. You have a right to be silent, anything you say, but they read me my Miranda rights. Okay, great. What does that mean? Does that mean to get your whole case thrown out? No. All it means is if you said something, okay, they can't use that statement against you. So you say, you got any guns in the back? Yeah, there's some guns over there and some cocaine over there. And, I just beat my girlfriend. So I took her blouse and put it in the back because I bought the blouse, So then they go and they get the information and they come to court and they say, but the man admitted it. No, but you didn't read him his Miranda rights. So you can't use the statement that he used. You can't use I beat my wife and cocaine in the back and all this other stuff. But does that mean all the evidence comes out? No. If they can find another way to still prove their case, then they can still go try to prove their case. So
let's bring in William.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, in cyberspace, this is Focus on Liberia. It's Primetime Sunday, and we are looking at the criminal justice system in the United States. We have one of our own as our guy. He is Mr. Stephen King. He is a Liberian like yourself, and he has been in the field of legality, if I can say, and he's trying to provide his professional understanding of how the laws work, so that we can be able to gain that understanding and conduct ourselves in a much better way to avoid the unknown. Let's bring in William Bernard King, who is a brother to our guest. William, any question you have for your brother? I mean, give him some kettle, let's say.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, I think last week, you were out there on the march. What was that march for? What were you doing out there for that march? And then also tell us the experience in the courtroom now when you're trying some of these cases where some of these folks, it has escalated to the point where they find themselves 2 or 3 weeks later in court. Share some thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. What's happening, people who are exercising their First Amendment rights, to protest, are getting arrested, because the police don't like that. If you're peacefully protesting, then they have no business to arrest you. I mean, they put a whole bus of people, they arrested them, they put the peaceful protesters, they put them in the bus, they drove them over to UCLA, I think it's Jackie Robins Stadium, and they kept them in the car. Now, one thing they didn't know is that area had been an area where they were testing people for COVID-19. So they're bringing in people, they're putting it there. Of course, there's no safe distancing, right? When you're locked up in a bus with all these people, all the windows rolled up and stuff like that. Then they put them over there. Then they say, well, what the hell are we going to do with them? And they just sit down. Well, what are we going to arrest them for? Well, I don't know. Let's see what the sergeant says, X, Y, Z. And they really sit down. They're talking just like that. Sometimes you get the microphone and you see it. And then they release those people. And so when I went to protest, I said, I cannot allow this to happen, right? And so I said, I'm going to start a group. I'm going to call it the Protesters Defense Alliance. And I'm going to represent these people for free. I said, I'm going to make a call out on social media for 100 lawyers. And I want 100 lawyers to come and represent for free, pro bono, anybody who's been arrested for exercising their First Amendment rights. So I got 100 lawyers in about 3 days. And the ones that didn't know criminal law, I said, I would train you. I would train you how to do it. So these people get arrested, but they don't have to go to court right away. They put the case over. They don't have to really go to court until October. But these people have never been arrested. They got these things now on their mind. They say, how can the police treat me like this? They dropped me off 30 miles away from my house. They took my cell phone, this, and that. And they get shot. But that is a serious infringement on somebody's constitutional rights. So the march that I started, and I said, we are charging the DA to dismiss these charges. The district attorney and the city attorney needs to right now declare that they would dismiss these charges. Otherwise, I would take an army of court into these courthouses, and we would clutter the courts, and we would set everything for trial, and we would stand up for what they're doing because it's wrong. And really, the call was really for peace. I said, because if you do that, it will start the healing process. Because, if you don't have any peace, there can't be no justice. So really, my cry was to say, let's start the healing process. Everybody's going through this COVID-19 thing. And then now I could be looking at these thousands of cases that I would be thinking, well, how many Black people you got? How many Hispanics you got? How many whites you got? Well, why only the white people get their cases dropped? Well, let's look at the Black people. But I got to look at it ahead of time. So I wasn't going to wait. So the movement was really, I started calling it Justice X, but then we started having to get more specific. I said, I'm just going to call it the Protesters Defense Alliance. I'm going to make it pro bono, and I'm going to call for all lawyers. So I had about 120 lawyers that answered. We made the announcement to Jackie Lacey. She said she's not going to charge these nonviolent offenses. Thank you. City attorney, he kind of made the same statement, but it was a little wishy-washy. But he made that same statement. Yeah, well, we don't know what they're going to do. They can say whatever they want to say, right? But this whole thing is about accountability, right? Hey, let my people heal, let's bring some peace to the justice system, because without no peace, there cannot be any justice.
Wow.
So it just cannot. It's that simple. It's really that simple. That is
protest. You talk about protest, okay?
Yeah, the protesters.
Issue back home. So before people protest, what should it be something that they ask for, and the police or the city tell them where to protest, how to protest?
Man, you can protest wherever you want to protest. It's good to have it organized, because you don't want to be interrupting businesses and things of that nature, right? So certain First Amendment rights, they can limit them, time, place, and manner. Let's say you can't go protest outside, the chief of police house at 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that, right? That would be unreasonable. So they just have to be reasonable in how they gather. Usually they notify the local city officials that this is going to be a gathering, so that if there's any police. I went to the one today in Hollywood. I did not see one police officer, not one, but they got the drones, so they just, watching from above. But it's smart, because now, if people are really trying to get this out of the system, and then the police is there, and then there's some kind of aggravation, it doesn't help anyone. So they have time, place, and manner restrictions. So these protests are very important, because what I like about them is you have whites, you have Blacks, you have, gay and transvestites, and all these people who have a sense and a feeling of oppression. And that's something that really brings us together. Nobody likes to be oppressed. Nobody likes to be betrayed. Nobody likes to be treated like dirt. And so when we unify that way, there's power, and it becomes a movement. And so what we're hoping is that this can be peaceful protesting. My position was that there has to be some accountability in this criminal justice system in order to have criminal justice reform. So first of all, are you looking at these cases to see if the cops are doing anything wrong? And really, maybe you need to have an independent panel come in and review if the cops are doing something wrong. Secondly, if somebody is peacefully exercising their constitutional rights, they should not be charged. They shouldn't even be arrested. And if you go on with this, then I'm going to take that and I'm going to prosecute those cases in federal court. Now you can do class actions. I don't like class actions as much. I came up with this thing 2 days ago. I said, I'm going to call it a mass action. So I put 20 here, I put 40 there, I put 50 there. If you have a problem with it, then we're going to fight it out in the court. And when you have these things, the second part of your question is just the experience in the courtroom. They fight you like hell. They bring all these people in that are trained, testifiers. They come in there with a straight face. They probably testify 500, 1,000 times. They look at the jury and they tell the jury this great answer. They say, well, why would the cop lie on your man? Fortunately, now the way things are going, we have the cameras. So we have to fight to get the cameras. And then, we put it to an expert, like a forensic expert, and they kind of break it down. And then we ask them for their cameras. You see, they have all these drones and all these things going on. They're looking at everybody out there. They're looking at everybody out there. You know, they know everything they need to know about you. And so they have an advantage. So the bottom line, your experience in courts is that it may take 2 to 3 years when you're prosecuting to get the case to trial. Then you finish, like that case, I got 3.1 million. They appeal for 2 years. Then I had to hire appellate lawyers. The only good thing is when you get the verdict, then you get 10% interest. So you say, well, it's just like money in the bank for me. Go ahead. You got to act like you don't need that money, right? And so you just let it sit there.
All right.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. You protested earlier. You didn't see that. We show pictures of you participating in the protest. Thank you for doing that. We all have to join in this fight. But my question is that when it comes to the legal way to restrain a suspect or anybody for that matter, because let's get it straight, right? George died today because he was being restrained excessively. So my question is, what's the legal way that is allowed for police officers to restrain somebody who is a suspect?
In a degree of force which is reasonably necessary under the circumstance.
Okay.
That's how vague it is. So they tell them these things, chokeholds. They tell them pepper spray.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying something, Tommy.
Yeah.
Chokehold, pepper spray, baton, punch him in the face, shoot him. What they do is they bundle it up and they say, if you need to, you can use any one of these 5 or 6 things. But you say, well, shouldn't they try number 1 or number 2 and then number 2 and then number 3 and then number 3 and number 4? No. Whatever the officer believes is reasonable under the circumstance. Now, about a year ago, we have, and I think it was after the guy in Sacramento, right? After that shooting. So they said, oh, we're going to change it. And now it's what's necessary. So, okay. So they can't say it's what's reasonable. Now they have to do what's necessary. Now, guess what happens? You have to have all these different cases now in order to determine what's necessary under the law, under each particular circumstance. Is this necessary here? Is this necessary here? Was it necessary there? So I think necessary is a little bit closer than reasonable, okay? Because they used to even have this thing called reasonably necessary. I said, okay, well, shit, man. And I mean, literally, you go through 50, 60 cases reading to try to interpret what's reasonably necessary under the circumstances. So now the cop can use any degree of force that is necessary under the circumstance. Of course, we know in the George Floyd case, that's not necessary. The guy was not resisting. He's begging for his mom. He's begging for his life. And in fact, he had been dead for over 2 minutes, while the cop still has his knee on his. And that's what they do. They cover up. Initially, they wouldn't even tell us when he had died, when he had gotten the ambulance, got to the hospital. When did they pronounce him? He was already dead. They bring their own coroners. They bring all their own people, and they hide this stuff. You have to do your own independent autopsy. You have to do your own independent investigation. And if you don't put that kind of pressure on them, they would never tell you. They would hide a man's body. And that's why it's good that we have these cameras and that we have lawyers now that are civil rights lawyers that are stepping up to the plate. But it's just as vague as it sounds. He can shoot you when he believes that it's necessary under the circumstance. You say, really? And the worst thing is they have this law called qualified immunity that protects the police officer. You sue them to yourself, the judge can say, I'm going to throw this out on qualified immunity. You say, wow, well, what's qualified immunity, judge? They say, well, how do we know that the police officers knew that what they were doing was wrong?
What?
Yeah. Man, I've had over 50% of my cases. I've had maybe 30 death cases, maybe about 15 of them. They just throw them out and says, Mr. King, there's nothing here. There's nothing in the law that shows that what the police officers did, that they knew that actions were unlawful. Well, okay.
Oh, I thought it said legally that ignorance of the law excuses no one. So how can a judge make that kind of decision?
Exactly. You see, it's a little different now. You have the police officers can use force that they believe is necessary to effectuate the arrest.
Mm-hmm.
At what point in time should they know that the degree of force they use is likely to kill someone? We say, well, damn, it's common sense, right? You're choking the guy, he can't breathe, he's sitting there. So, no, Mr. King. You have to show us, and you're right, it's a double standard.
Mm.
Mr. King, you have to show us a law that puts these officers on notice because they're police officers. They're officers of the state. They're there to protect and serve. They have immunity. They have immunity. You don't have immunity. They have immunity. Because of all this power, they have immunity. They can do certain things and not be held responsible. That's what immunity means.
Isn't that going away now? Isn't that going away, or is there something that is passed and is waiting? Is that something that you guys is looking to pass or change? We hear on the news, but is it happening, or that's just in the discussion?
It's in the discussion now. Qualified immunity is the big thing. And that's one thing that, because it takes money, that's the political aspect of it. And so there's a lot of big lawyers, white lawyers, Jewish lawyers, they're looking at this thing and they say, oh, wow, we have to make a change to this. So it's going to take a lot of, politics. It's going to take a lot of people with money, in order to sort of get this law in shape, because you have federal judges that make these decisions. The federal judges are appointed, they're there for life. They're not worried about you. Nothing you're going to do is make them lose their job. So that is in the work. That's one of the big things. There's the 123 bill, which is how long can you be on probation? That's being worked on right now. They say you don't need to keep your people on probation for 3 years. They're paying all these bills. They can't move on with their life. There's the Crisis Act, which is they seem to defund the police, but really what they're doing is they're trying to reallocate some of these resources into other programs that can help people in these communities, where there's so much of a police force or police enforcement. Well, let's cut back and use some of these resources to help. I think Governor Newsom said like $150 million budget, and those are some of the things that I'm getting involved in now. I'm establishing a nonprofit, the Protesters Defense Alliance, so we can apply for some of these funds to help the reallocation of funds in this Crisis Act. And beyond that, it's about holding the police officers accountable. The drone thing is one thing too, because that's a privacy thing. And then the big push is the qualified immunity. How can we end qualified immunity? So it's in the discussion, but we're just trying to get our foot in the door. I've been making appointments with Herb Wesson's office and, Karen, I've been all these different people to get a sit down. So you get to sit down and then you show up at the meeting and then you make sure you make a record. You're on a discussion, you raise your hand, you write a letter, because that's the only way that there will be some sort of change and some sort of reform.
All right.
Well, I see why sometimes people say this is a systemic or racial discrimination, because from what you're explaining, it looked like this is coordinated, the police, the judge, and everybody else. That brings me to the question: why was this whole police force set up in the first place? Was it, the elite or the powerful to protect themselves against Black people or people they deem or threat to them? Why do we have the police?
That's true. That's a good question. They're supposed to be there to protect and serve. And there's another piece of it that I started thinking about. Like here, like the sheriff's department is like a quasi-military operation. So they formulate themselves almost like a military. And then I don't know if I'm looking at it like, oh, maybe those guys kind of have PTSD, or what is the mindset of a militant, oppressor, so to speak. They go against the enemy, right? You got to go arrest this guy. He's in his bad neighborhoods. They have this crime. They're different than you. So I'm wondering if that militant, attitude and perspective plays into it. I don't think the police were designed or, organized to go and harm Black people, harm minority. I just think it happened that way. We're in the disenfranchised communities. We are in the locations where we don't have a lot of money. Sometimes people are stealing. You have maybe disputes, right? Domestic violence disputes, things like that. Because once you call the police, I have a lot of people that come and say, oh, I really didn't mean it. I want to, that's okay. He just made me mad. But you already called the police to the front door. Well, guess what? Your husband is going to jail, And then later on, or your wife, and then later on, when you come to court and say, oh, I was just upset. They say, what the hell with it? We are still prosecuting them. So for me, that's when I first started seeing it and say, really, where really is the agenda here? If the woman says she was upset, the man is not, he has it. There's no scars on the lady. She wanted him out the house. She's upset. She made the arrest. You arrested him for a felony. Then you say, oh, I would give you a misdemeanor. I said, what do you mean? The man went in a 1 year domestic violence counseling. I said, well, I'm telling you that it didn't happen. So, well, we can't take that chance. Said, okay. And then I was in Orange County the first time I had a case like this. I went out there. They said, you know what, King, we will dismiss the case, but we want a buccal swab from your client's mouth. I said, for what? So we want his DNA. I said, for what? Oh, we want to see that he's attached to any other crimes in the past.
Wow.
I said, how is that my problem? They said, well, we'll dismiss the case today. Then I said, okay, well, let me talk to him. Like I said, well, I don't have any problems or stuff like that. So maybe I would do it. And I went back. I still couldn't do it. But I said, now when you test it, and then, so I said, do you guys have like a bank of all these cases you're trying to solve? And they said, yeah. I said, okay. So if you find that there's no crime that he's connected to from the past, will you destroy his swab? Oh, no, we keep it. I said, for what? So, well, what even commits a crime in the future? I said, oh,
wow.
And then my feeling and my sense is they are studying us. Now they want to say, this is the black man DNA, this is the African man DNA, and these are the violent people that have these violent tendencies. Okay, this is what their DNA looks like. And that's why we need to get rid of these people. That's my thinking, it's my feeling. But why else do you want to keep my man's DNA? I said, to hell with it. Eventually they dismissed the case anyways.
Mr. King.
Yeah.
Let's talk about charges. In this case, charging suspects.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a phone call. Let's use George Floyd as an example. There was a phone call. He was a suspect. The police came. They tried to effect an arrest. They put out a story that he was resisting. But at some time, we saw him handcuffed. He was nailed to the ground. So the point I'm making is there was a suspect who was arrested because of a phone call that he was doing something wrong. In the case of the police officers, they were seen on video as suspects who killed this individual, George. But it took days for them to be charged and arrested. So when it comes to charging people, are the police above the law here?
Yeah. In essence, it is. It applies to them differently because they're law enforcement. Most of the time, the police don't get charged with the crime. It's just because of all the pressure that was put, on the George Floyd case. So they have an independent review. They say, oh, we're going to do our review. We're going to investigate all the officers that were involved. And so they're just trying to cover it up. They're trying to look at the cameras from the store and trying to figure out what they can figure out. So it's totally different because they have internal investigation.
Right.
And that's the word I should have used. It's not really an independent review. That's what we want is an independent review. They do the IA, independent investigation. They assign a detective. He goes around and talks to all the cops that are there. He goes over the tapes with them. He goes over all of their voice recordings back and forth. And they do this, and then the detective basically takes the case, and then he goes over to the prosecutor's office and say, here's the case. But, we think that under the circumstances that, a reasonable officer would have also believed that that was necessary to effectuate the arrest. They wanted to keep him in his place. He had methamphetamine in his body. Because how you know he had methamphetamine in his body at that point, right? Oh, the crowd would have gotten upset. If we had gotten off, that maneuver helped to keep the crowd from getting and inciting a riot. The crowd was yelling. The other officers were calming them down. It was necessary that this officer didn't make a move. All this stuff. So it's a completely different analysis when it's the cops. Absolutely, yes. First, they keep it in-house. Secondly, the district attorney's office is not even looking at it until the until the police agency finishes their investigation. And then they only give them a skewed aspect of how they looked at the case. They don't give them all the transcripts. They pick out this part, they pick out that part, they pick out this part, they pick out that part. Never does the DA's office say, well, go and give me everything so I can take a look at this. Never. So they just take it and say there's not enough information or evidence there to charge the police officer with a crime. And then they let it go. So, yes, they have this blue shield, you know, like we talk about white privilege, you know, they are privileged. And then they all stand up, you know, they all stick together. And one thing that I really like, I think that will help in this George Floyd case is that they're going after the other officers who just stood by and allowed this to happen. You see, because you watch a crime being committed. You know, I've had cases in the past 5, 6, 7 years ago, and the whole thing was, did these officers have a duty to intervene? Okay, and a lot of times, like I tell you, sometimes the judge just throws out my case or cuts it down to only 1 or 2 things before I can take it to a jury. I want to go to a jury so I can make new law, so I can make new policy. But all these duty to intervene case, the judge will say, you don't have anything that shows that these other guys knew that this officer here was using excessive force. Oh, really? You know, they're beating the man in the head with a baton 10 times, his blood. What do you mean? Oh, these officers were paying attention to the crowd. They were doing this, they were doing that. They didn't know, blah, blah, blah. So here, what I like is that, you know, the charges are almost sort of like they're co-conspirators. There's almost like they are accomplices in what actually happened, you know? So it goes to their mental set that if you're a cop and you see something like that happen, okay, you have to do something about it. So that's why I really like, you know, one of my concepts right now is the accountability piece. How do we make sure that these officers are accountable for their action? So it's a totally different standard. It is a double standard. It's a hush-hush standard. And then they leak out just what they want to the district attorney to see it. And then the district attorney says, okay, fine. So that's why we want an independent review. We want an independent agency to come in to review those things.
Correct. And it has to be, I wonder what happens if the suspect was white, or in your experience?
It's different, but the whole justice system treats them differently. White people are not as angry. White people are not as violent. White people are I mean, you know, when they look at you, they judge us. You know, they judge us. I was living in Manhattan Beach. They would tell you, you know, like the guy who pulled me on smoke. So he pulled me over. So give me an idea. I'll tell you. And say, okay, fine. He told me. He said, because you don't live around here. I said, how you know I don't live around here? I was at the back garage. I come and pull into the garage. He said, oh, because your license, you know, it's just, you know, the car is not registered. And I think I was driving Tommy's car. As a matter of fact, I stopped driving his cars. But I was driving Tommy's car, you know, because sometimes I'm in trial against all these cops, you know. So I say, hey, man, let me borrow your car so I can get from the court home safely, so they don't like know my license plate or whatever. But that time, they pulled me over close to the house. I was staying in Manhattan Beach for a while. And he said, just change your license, man. Change your license plate. I said, for what? Well, I got to change my license plate to show you that I have a reason to belong somewhere, you know? So it's very disproportionate. The justice system treats white people differently. I had a case and it was just a drug case, but it was pretty sophisticated because the guy's on his computer and he was trying to get girls. And then he wasn't even a drug guy, but the girls wanted drugs. So he did this and that, and he found the drugs, he got everything, he's gonna hook up with the person, ended up being an undercover cop. They got busted. I said, dang. And it was very thorough, like what they did to try to get this guy. I said, wow, man. So we went in there, I said, Judge, I wanna go to this court here where we can maybe settle the case. It's called EDP, early disposition. It's not a violent crime. It's his first offense. Can I please just go over there? So we went there. I said, my man, you probably have to do maybe a 1.5 year program. And then the judge would say, if you complete it, then you would take it off your record. If you don't complete it, you will have a 1.5 years in jail. That's basically what they normally do. I got there, man, the judge gave this guy an 8-week program. And if he finished the 8-week program, he would dismiss the case. I said, wow, okay, let's sign up. One thing is I really knew the guy needed help, you know, but I said, yeah, let's sign up. So then while he's at home, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, guess what happens? He does the same thing, you know? This and the drugs, and this time he's using the drugs to bring the girl, everything like that. Police pop him again. I said, my man, you are gone, man. I said, you're probably looking at 3 years in prison. I will try to get you 2 years and you will do 1 year, you know, and I will see if I can get you a lockdown facility. Then you could do it at a lockdown drug facility, you know, so you can get help while you're there. Yeah, I approached the judge. I said, Judge, you know, we're just here. We've been working on some things. We're almost there. And I think my client needs another chance. So, what do you want? I said, he almost finished the 8-week program. He had about 6 weeks. He only had 2 more weeks to go. And I'm thinking, of course, most of the time it's an 18-month program. And the same judge They'll give it to me maybe about 50 times for my black client. At least 50 times, I'm telling you. So I said, Judge, but I started straight face, right? I said, but Judge, I think he just needs a chance to finish the 2-week program. And then he would know that what he did was wrong. He told Judge, I'm telling you, I don't normally tell you what my client told me, but that's what he told me. He said, give me 2 more weeks. He will never have this again. I said, Mr. King, you know, I'm inclined to allow that to happen. So the guy just had 2 more weeks to do, and they dismissed both cases that were felony cases. Okay. And those are like cases that are priorable. So that means that if you do the same thing again, they can add like 3 years on top. So it's not a small thing. You know, transporting, you know, to supply drugs to somebody else, you know, or transporting to go use or whatever, it's a big offense. It can even be a federal offense. So, wow. Yes, it's very, very different. It's very, very disproportionate. And even the black prosecutors do that because they are controlled by the police union. Jackie Lacey, all those people in this is political. She's controlled by the police union.
Okay. Attorney King, let's bring in a caller.
Okay.
Who's on the line? And that is Joe Moyo. Joe, you are live. Where are you calling from?
Yes, sir. Las Vegas, Nevada.
Welcome, Joe.
Yeah, very, very good topic. But, you know, one thing that has to be addressed, I believe, and this goes to the root cause of all these legally sanctioned murders by cops throughout the United States, is their training manual. Because if you look at what some of the reasons they give for using deadly force, sometimes it really doesn't make any sense. I mean, for instance, the guy in Atlanta, I think a night or 2 nights ago, if somebody has turned their back to you and is running, for instance, like the individual in South Carolina a couple of years ago, who was actually running from the police, he had his back turned and he was shot. And if you look in the police manual, you know, their training manual, yes, that's supposed to be, you know, a reasonable force. In, I think it was February 2015, because I used to live in California for many years. They had, it was something like 10 in the morning. There was a firing squad, a police firing squad of a young 26-year-old black man, Mario Woods. They said he had a knife. 9 police, he was up against the wall. They said he was approaching them. And they shot and killed him. There was something like, I think, maybe about 40 or 50 shots. And that's supposed to be legally sanctioned. I mean, I lived in Europe for a while, and every now and then I go visit. I've never. They are so shocked as to what passed as legally sanctioned, shootings in the United States by the police. You go to the UK, you rarely hear about police, discharging their firearms. So, and another thing again that we notice is that the black families that are whose kids are of these legally sanctioned murders, they're quick to settle with the police.
Yep.
So, for instance, we hear about this Mario Woods. They paid, the city of San Francisco gave his parents, his mother, I think, a few $1 million. That died down. Philando Castile in Minnesota, who was killed, that was live on Facebook. And the guy said the police said he felt threatened and shot him 7 times. The man tells you, look, I have a gun in my car. And you said, okay, you got a gun in your car. And the young man was trying to take his, show him where he had the gun, and he opened fire. He said, no, don't touch it. And he just, that was live on Facebook. So hopefully I heard Ron Paul, or whatever his name is, the senator has a bill out there that will revisit all these training manuals and all these various training programs, and to see if they can make some reversals. So young black people, who seem to be the obvious target because the police feel that they're threatened by him. So we wouldn't be, hearing about these murders pretty much almost on a daily basis, because when you hear one, you say, okay, well, that's it. That's George Floyd. It's going to stop. 2 days later, you hear about another one, and, the trail of anguish within the Black community, it goes on and on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, thank you. Mr. Jha.
Very good topic. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Jha, let me ask Mr. King this topic. In the George Floyd case.
Maybe Joe, he wants to respond to Joe first.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, no, I mean, Joe, I think you bring up a lot of good points. There's an embedded fear, or that they fear us for some reason. So the man say I have a gun, doing the right thing. You go. There's something embedded in these cops to where they have this fear of Black people.
And what is that? What is that actual fear? Because I'm thinking of it of, like, I don't know the better word to use, but inferiority. It's like you're intimidated by Black people, like the way the Nazis persecuted the Jews because they are afraid that the Jews will take over and all these kind of things. Because how can you have a man in handcuffs and still be afraid of him?
Exactly. And it's embedded, so I say it's embedded, and then it's generational, in my opinion. So I don't know if it's coming from the military, but this is a generational thing. It could even go all the way back to slavery, but it's a generational fear and the way that they see us. And when we talk about, manuals and policies, it'd be nice to have uniform policies, which is one thing, because every department has something a little bit different. But the laws are what shape the policies. So if we don't have cases that are going to trial to say, if somebody is running away from you, it's not reasonable to shoot them in the back. And there was law, I'm telling you, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, they're running a fleeing felon, but he was a felon. So I didn't want him to get away, so I shot him. Then they changed it and said, well, no, you have to know it's a fleeing felon that may be armed and he poses danger to someone. Now you have to know that the person has a firearm, and then you reasonably believe that that person is going to reach for his firearm. And then you believe that it's necessary to use that in order to effectuate an arrest, or in order to save a life, your life or someone else. So I'm on the same page as you, Joe, with regards to the manual. The manuals are very loose that I've seen, because it says you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, whichever one you choose. And then they go train, and then they give them hypothetical situations, and then they kind of work with them on the situations. But if the law doesn't force them to change their policies, they won't do it. Just like when we started off with that Child Protective Services case where they say you're not supposed to seize the children without a warrant. Do you know that when we got into that case, about 5 years earlier, the main judge in that court, the presiding judge of that court, told the social workers, what you guys are doing is wrong. Here's the law that says you cannot go seize those children without a warrant, or have a police officer there who can fill out the forms and get it to the judge before you can take the kids. 5 years had went by. And it wasn't until we had that trial and they put 40 witnesses up on the stand, to act like something was different. And you know what we had to do? We had to call the judge who wrote the memo. We said, oh yeah, okay. We called the judge. We said, Judge, you wrote this memo, right? 5 years ago. You told these people they didn't change their policies, right? No, they didn't change it. They didn't change it until after that lawsuit. So those are just some of the factors, Joe. So I really like where you're coming from, but sometimes it takes case laws and then not selling these cases. Because, they say a brown man is worth $1 million, white man's worth $15 million. I've got $1 million in a case where the guy didn't even die.
Wow. So my final question here.
Let's take one more caller, Mr. C.
Yeah, time.
Yeah. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
This is Zina D. Doa, third, and the only caller from Colorado.
Zina, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Your contribution.
Yeah, yesterday, I think a couple of days ago, I had to challenge most of my service members that, in my own honest opinion, there's no good cop, there's no good police officer in the entire system. and we were going back and forth. But as I look into the system, I realized that, and my point was, if there's a good cop in the system, like the case, they use Minnesota for the case study. The dude who did the killing have had at least close to 18 or more cases of unethical behavior in your performances, open cases. 18 at least. And then I heard that he was doing that there were about 2 murders. And as police officers, because I'm into law enforcement, I'm not just a police officer, but I'm into law enforcement because I've served in the military. I got a lot of friends that are police officers. When these guys go to work, they start their duty from where the prior police officers start. So that means they get brief of what unfolded prior to their shift. So basically, I'm saying that all these cops are aware of what their fellow cops do. And I honestly believe that the bad cop and the good cop cannot work together, because a good cop will not compromise his ethic to sympathize with a bad cop. When a bad cop does that, a good cop will not sit there and see a bad cop does something wrong and not say anything. That makes him an accomplice. And I don't think I would refer to such a cop a good cop. So looking at Minneapolis, where the prison still do profess that he has some good cop at that prison, even though they were all aware of this bad cop, but no one spoke out. No one did anything. So it went on the rampage. Now people start protesting. Then you find cops from that same prison telling us that they are good cops, but they never did anything. Even though they knew what was going on. So how can I be convinced that there's a good cop at that prison?
And Zina, to your point, this cop who they know has a history or 18 open cases has his knee on somebody's neck, bleeding from the nose, and this cop still standing there.
Exactly, right? So that goes to notice.
Out of a sudden, somebody come around making video about how good they are. You see that? So how you only say you are a good cop when people start to protest? If you are a good cop, why can't you speak from the onset? Because from the inception of this cop bad behavior that accumulated more than 18 cases, if the good cops at that department had done anything from the onset, we couldn't have had George Floyd there today. So if we apply this analysis to all these other various prisons around the U.S., there will be no good cops. Now look at Missouri, for example. That kid that was shot more than 70 times in Ferguson, Missouri. The same prison came and told us that they got good cops. But when Obama sent a team of investigators to go investigate, they found out that 98% of their targeted victims were black people. But they still profess to have good cops. And people buy these nonsense. I don't think there's any good cop. Because good cop cannot work with a bad cop and compromise his ethics. You have to sympathize with a bad cop. I've never seen that before. I've been a service now for more than 8 years.
So Zina.
And my team. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Zina, you were saying what President Trump, I can't believe I'm calling President Trump said that these are just bad apples. You don't believe that? Few bad apples.
That's crap. I debated on my whole battalion yesterday, and nobody could win you on that. If these guys are just bad apples, how can bad apples overrun the entire system?
I know.
That's why nobody answers it. If there's a few bad apples in the police system, people will know that. I tell you, and people see what these guys do. But a good cop do not say anything. What makes you good if you don't speak out, but you dare to shield the bad habit of your brother? Then you say you're good. That's the question about the answer. If I'm a good cop, I should not shield these unethical performances of my fellow cops. I should be able to speak out from the initial onset. That's what we do in the military. When you do something unethical, we put you out right away. We don't compromise that because we know what happens when you breed unethical behavior. That's what's happening right now. Then you start making videos. I just think that's just crappy. But I will sit back and listen to the show. I'm not really enjoying the guy you guys got in studio, man. We need more of this. We need more of these guys. I think we can sit back and learn. Thanks a lot.
Keep your dial set here and focus on Liberia. You will get some of all these guys.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Focus on Liberia. We are almost at the close of this broadcast. Let me make this quick. Thank you, Mr. Jai, right there. And my final question to you, Mr. King, is the issue of first degree, second degree, third degree. You followed the story with George Floyd. Many of the protesters was like, what? Third degree? No, we're not buying it. This guy murdered this guy in broad day, and you want to tell me third degree? So my question is, what is the difference between first, third, and third you know, what's the
Yeah, you know,
difference?
every state has different laws, you
Mm-hmm.
know, so, but it has to be premeditated, willful act.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue is, did he put the knee on the guy's neck with the intent to kill him? Or is it just an act that got so egregious that it was an unlawful killing? Or maybe close to something that somebody would know that if you do this and you keep your neck on somebody, that they're likely to die? Or was it really premeditated that you went in there with the malice aforethought? I'm going to put my knee on this guy's neck until he dies. So it's just layers. I think they went with the third degree because it would be easier to prove. And they didn't want to overcharge the case. They want to say, okay, this is the case. Because sometimes here you have cases and it may go to like a grand jury, and then the grand jury kind of decides if the charges will stick. So I think they went with the third degree. I think it is a higher level. I think it is first degree. But first degree, then you would have to show that it's premeditated, willful act designed to murder somebody. Maybe he didn't design it in the very beginning, but the actions were so egregious that it should be at least second degree murder, you know, in my opinion. But I don't know many Minneapolis law with regards to those issues. I have a friend of mine who just did one, and I was going to look at the webinar because he recorded it for me. So it's just, I think they did third degree because the level of proof that is required. And then, you know, the investigation, they're coming out with all kind of stuff. Like maybe the crowd should have intervened and all this other kind of, you know, mumbo jumbo. So they just basically go after what level they think they can prove. But then I think once everybody in society said, no, come on, man. Because again, now you find out that this guy has experience or has done other acts of this nature. So you say, well, wait, hold up. Because this is a cop who's a bad cop. Now you can look at all those things and apply it to say that his mentality may have been to a level where he either intended to kill this guy, or if he knows that if he continues to act in this manner, that the guy will end up dead. So it's a little bit of a question where I don't want to answer specifically because, you know, Minneapolis law versus California law. But Zena brought up some good things, you know, because there's this code of silence. There's the blue shield. The cops don't talk on each other. They don't talk on each other. It's just like if you're a Christian, you know, mom said, don't be unequally yoked, but you got some friends that do this and do that, and you just don't say nothing about it, right?
Yeah.
That's how these cops are. There's a code of silence. There's a blue shield. And then the bad apple thing, no. You know why? Because embedded in us, we are ingrained to say the cops are there to protect us, you know? And so we don't want to think that all these cops are bad. But when you look at the rap sheet, I had a case where a guy had murdered, you know, one of my clients. And sure enough, I went through, he had murdered somebody else 5 years before. But then when it got time for the trial, the judge didn't let me use the fact that he had murdered somebody else 5 years before under similar circumstances to help prove this murder. So there's all these things that the cops are protected. They got their own group. I think it should be first degree murder. And I think primarily it's because now we know that this cop has done some of these other acts in the past. So it's kind of a roundabout way to answer the question, but they charge what they think they can prove. And I'm glad they elevated it. And I'm glad they're holding the other officers responsible as well. So we can start some reform. And I think most of all started some healing so we can have peace, because without peace, there will be no justice.
And Zina raised another good point about the military, because we hear of court martial and some other investigations in the military that the military themselves will bring up. Oh, it's not with the cop, it's not with the police. I mean, you have to beat on them. But I have two more questions. Here's the first one. We've talked about police pull over. What's about the police coming to your house? What do you do?
Well, you have a sanctity, right? Your home is your sanctity. You have the highest degree of security in your home. You go to your house, you close your door. That's it. That's the place, number one place for you to feel secure and safe. So they would have to have a warrant. Okay, if they don't have a warrant, you know, then they have to believe that there's exigency, meaning that somebody's going to die. Because they used to do all these things where, oh, we thought they're going to flush the drugs down the toilet, or this or that story. It says, well, you go in there with your guns drawn, then you're going to say, oh, they have weapons, somebody's going to shoot at me. So they need to get a warrant. The only way they can avoid that is to show imminent danger is going to occur within the time that it would take them to get the warrant. Now, it used to be like, oh, well, we got to wait for the judge to come, and that's 2 days to sign it. Now they can get a warrant in about 3 hours at the most, probably 20 minutes. And they can just fill out a thing, send it to the judge, and the judge can sign it and send it back. So they have to show that some kind of danger would happen within the time frame that it would take them to get the warrant. So really what they do, they need to get there and just sort of surround the premises, and then stay there and then fill out the affidavit, send it to the judge so the judge can sign the warrant before they go into the house. They knock on the door. You do not have to allow the cops into the house. Okay? Say, I'm sorry, sir, do you have a warrant? We don't have a warrant. It's X, Y, and Z home. I'm sorry, sir, do you have a warrant? Or I'd like to have an attorney present, before there's any further discussion. Now, of course, it's hard. You got cops outside and they got guns. They're going to say, well, we have a report that this suspect is armed and he ran in here and he's going to hurt these people. So the real issue is that, A, they need a warrant. If they don't have the warrant, they have to show imminent danger is going to occur within the amount of time that it would take to get a warrant. Average time frame is about 3 hours. So you have the most protection in your home, not like your car. When you put your car on the road, right, you got to have, sticker, you can't have tinted windows, all this stuff, because the car moves around. You don't have as much privilege in your car as you in your home. So it's a hard thing to say, cops haven't come to my house like that, thank God. But number one, officer, all due respect, nobody's hurt here. Nobody's going anywhere here. We just respectfully ask that you get a warrant and we'll be able to comply with everything that you say. Anything else to say? Is there a watch commander? Is there somebody, that I can speak to? But I'm not going to open this door. I don't feel like there's enough evidence or enough reason for you to come into my home. If you can get a warrant, I will gladly apply. Now, a lot of times when they say the warrant is on its way, they say, okay, fine, I will remain here. But as a lawyer now, we say that, but if I'm sitting there in my home, right, and my family is there and the cops are outside, I say, you don't have a warrant. If you need me to come outside, I can come outside, but then I don't want to go outside, right? Because then they're going to say I reached for something. So I say, please bring a warrant. Nobody's in danger here. I can't answer any questions. I would like to have an attorney present, and I would like to see the warrant. And that's it.
My last question is, how do we change the system? Most of the time what we hear is you have to vote. Now we see protests. So the most effective way to bring about change in the criminal justice system, is it voting or protesting? What can we do?
I like a little bit of both. Voting brings the awareness, right? To say, look.
We voted for Barack, and so.
I know, and he was there for 8 years, right? We need reform, in the police unions. Their unions protect them a lot. And so that's really what we're up against, and I don't know as much, and we can maybe save that for another topic, but we need to, the police unions, I think, have a lot to do with what is happening here. So how are we going to reform? How are we going to get into the unions in order to say that the way that things are happening is not okay? When you sue the cop doesn't pay, the police department pays or the union pays. So I think the ultimate change is, within these unions, because these unions have a lot of power. And for example, the union controls the district attorney's office. So they don't want their money to be affected. So they just go along with what the unions say. And then the cops just go along with whatever protections the unions say that they will provide. So I think we have to change policy. We have to really delve into the police unions. How much protection they have, is it really worth all of those protections? And then how do we start taking some of their money and some of their, because in order to give to other resources in the community. So I think that we need to heal as a community. That's a big part of it. We need to heal. And then we need to hold the cops accountable. And I think the accountability, it's not the violent protesting, the peaceful protesting. It brings in awareness, and that's very good to get that dialogue going. But then we need to tap into these unions and have different bills, Senate bills, Assembly bills that are designed to look at the unions, because then you almost get into like a Trump type, situation. And we need to break that apart and see what's going on there and how it's coming really from the top to the bottom. You know, we're not going to be able to do it from the bottom to the top. This is good. We riot, we bring in awareness. We don't riot, we protest, we bring in awareness and things of that nature. But, you know, eventually we're all going to go to work. And the only way we can bring change is from the top. And so I think it's the unions and these different bills and affecting where the funding is going and redirecting so that the community can see there's healing. I think we have to do it together. The cops can't do it on their own. And then really find out where the psyche is coming from. Is it this quasi-military thing? Is it that cops are like freaked out, you know, they kill somebody here and they have like trauma from it, and then they don't get healing. They don't get to go see a psych, anything like that. Then they just go back out there and they do it again.
All right. I think that's a great way to end it, so that it will set the stage for you to come back so we can talk about reform.
Yeah, you guys give me a lot of homework.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you for being here. Focus on Liberia. And I mean, you know, this is great. Yeah, we can all come together and share ideas. You know, I put my number in there. I can also just go ahead and in the chat, I would just put my email. That way, if anybody has any ideas, it is sking@kingsjusticelaw, KINGS, justicelaw.com. That way we can talk about these ideas and I can be prepared to accept everybody's input and see what we can do the next time around.
Great, great. Good to see you. Let's
All right.
wrap it up.
On that note, folks in cyberspace, we want to say thank you, especially those of you who stay with us throughout the broadcast. Mr. Kim, of course, they shared a lot of good information with us that we can use to protect ourselves and our loved ones against this justice system that seem to be stuck against us as minority people. We have to be there for ourselves. He provided very good information how to comply with the police, how to conduct yourself. Bear in mind that you have safety first, and if you feel that the police officer, is behaving wrong against you, then you can go to court. But to want to fight for your right there, that you may not have that life that you really want. Mr. King, thank you so much. Folks in cyberspace, thank you so much. We want to tell you that at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we are having a debate on political issues. We'll be looking at the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration and the Weah administration. Two outstanding gentlemen have serious disagreement on fundamental issues in these two administrations. We will be going into it right here. I focus on Liberia. 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be here. Dennis will be here. We'll be in the middle, and the guys will be going ahead. You don't want to miss it.
That's Rumble in the Jungle.
Yeah. So on that note, folks, we want to say thank you. Yeah, I focus on Liberia. We educate, we elevate, we promote all things Liberia. Mr. King, our guest, being a Liberian, he brought some knowledge here, and we are happy that we have him. On that note, we are closing with this song that says, "We are all Liberians, and Liberia is our home." Stay safe. The virus stay real. Bye-bye.
Is our